Hey folks, welcome back to the BlueberrySupreme YouTube channel. This is Jonah and we are going to cover part 2 of hunting adventures in the Sam Houston National Forest. Two fraternity brothers and I traveled to Huntsville, Texas on a hot and humid June weekend to go on a legitimate primitive camp and hunt looking for wild hog. None of us had ever hunted before, but we prepped our bags, loaded the guns, and packed some snacks for this 2.5-day trek into the Sam Houston National Forest, armed with the knowledge garnered from books, websites, and a particularly helpful Facebook group. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right back into the story with hunting adventures in the Sam Houston National Forest. The temperatures were rising as we stomped through this thick brush, scouting for a vantage point at the intersection of two creeks about a mile deep into the forest. The humidity was hitting high and I was baking in my gear. We did end up finding this intersection, as you can see here, and this deep creek bed was a good vantage point for us. Stephen, Aaron, and I hopped back into the car to head back to Lake Stubblefield for round 2 of fishing to wait out the rest of the afternoon. Our hopes and dreams for a weather change were somehow answered by Mother Nature, and soon as we reached Lake Stubblefield, it started to rain. Luckily for me, this was not some weak-ass rain. This was some cold, cooling rainwater that fell from the skies, and I could not have been more thankful at this point in time. I'm a chubby guy who overheats easily, and I knew I was darn lucky for this rain. There's always a balance between getting what you want, such as the rain to cool you off, versus getting your fishing gear snagged twice in a row. As we know, 3 times means your rod's going to break.
I do it all the time.
Yes, Aaron. And Aaron was the one who snagged his somehow on the bridge.
Exactly.
How did you do it again? A few moments after the rain stopped, the wildlife came out in force. Looking across the waters, we were noticing snakes and turtles wading out from hidden places, and birds emerging from their brief retreat. We even got a close-up of this tiny little snake that we still haven't managed to identify. Therefore, if you know what this thing is, please let us know in the comments below. But after I got a little too interested in Aaron, Stephen smacked it a few times with his fishing lure, and it decided to return to the waters. After about 2 hours of fruitless fishing, we hit 6:30 p.m. and decided it was time to get moving. We had about an hour and a half to travel to our designated trail, wade through the brush, and get settled in for the second hog sit for Pig 30. As we geared up, we knew that for this particular hog sit, this was likely going to be our last chance for bagging any hog. We knew we needed some elevation, minimal brush, and maximized visibility in order to be successful. Aaron had determined during his earlier scouting along the intersecting creeks that we may be successful with this location due to the fact that this location checked off all of the requirements we had set before. Those requirements included old and new hog sign, elevation, minimal brush, and maximized visibility. In addition, Aaron and Stephen had also scouted this before on a previous weekend. There was plenty of hog sign back then, new and old. We thought this was going to be our chance. We reached the intersection of the creeks and began to walk along the creek beds to take a look at what vantage point would be the most beneficial and have the highest possibility for us to spot hog from a distance and have clean shooting lanes. As you could see here, the creek beds are indeed quite deep. What is harder to see is that the creek beds didn't have all that much water in them. Soon we found a tree formation that allowed us to imitate the sitting formation we had the day prior. Aaron sat far left, Steven in the middle, and I was on the far right. The sunlight peeked through the trees in the forest, and as you can see here, it was absolutely beautiful. The tall trees, the low brush in this particular part of the forest created a very peaceful scene. This might look like a still, but this is actually a video of the footage I took in the forest. My ass was firmly planted in my thermarest sitting pad, waiting for the sun to set and keeping an eye out on any sort of movement that we might be able to pick up from across the way. The view here is actually my shooting lane. I was looking over the intersection of the creek beds, and as you can see, my shooting lane was cluttered with trees and other brush, but in a forest as dense as this, there's no other choice. No idea what that was. After an hour without movement, Aaron and Steven came to the agreement that we needed to see if we could draw in some hogs, particularly using some hog calls. At this point, we heard a little bit of movement off to the left in Aaron's shooting lane. However, no visuals, so we went ahead with the hog calls. The sunlight faded, and unfortunately, on this 2.5 day trek, we didn't manage to bag any hogs. We made the disappointed trek back to the truck through the darkening forest, and as we were walking through, looking down, you could see plenty of hog sign, new and old. And yet, at the same time, we didn't catch a glimpse, we didn't hear anything that made us think that hogs were moving through this area. Now, they are nomadic creatures, so in this instance, we may have just been very unfortunately unlucky. And in that instance, we can accept that, because that means next time, when we come back out, we're going to be able to be as hopeful as we were this first trip.
And there was a little bit of that. Definitely some stuff left. That's good. Man, I'm gonna cover myself in fun.
Despite being unsuccessful, we were still optimistic because we knew next time that we had a little bit more experience, we were going to bring back more knowledge, and we were going to bring even better gear so that we can have a successful hog hunt. And while we were dealing with the sting of disappointment our own different ways, ultimately, this trip was by no means a waste. We had 2.5 days where we got to spend time with one another out in the beautiful nature and wildlife that is the Sam Houston National Forest. In fact, the disappointment fueled our desire to try this again, and I believe our next hunt may be a little different. I believe we're going to be bow hunting in Lake Somerville. So stay tuned for that, and we'll hope to take you with us deep into that forest. Thank y'all for watching Hunting Adventures in the Sam Houston National Forest. As mentioned in part 1, there was some specific gear that I like to recommend to hunters and hikers out there who are looking to replace or buy new gear. And all of the gear that I had utilized for this trip was purchased from Amazon, including my 40-liter mountaintop backpack, the snake gaiters, the Vaporware camo top, the Columbia Royce Peak 2 pants, and the Thermarest sitting pad. Links to all of those products are below, just in case you are someone who's looking for hunting or hiking gear. Let us know what you thought about this series. What would you have done differently in the scenarios that we found ourselves in during this 2.5-day hunt? What are some things that you would have recommended in some of the situations that we were experiencing that would have helped maximize our chances for bagging hogs? And lastly, do you have any of your own war stories about hunting in state parks in Texas or across the nation? If you have any of those recommendations, any of those comments to make, any of your own war stories, please share below. Until next time, thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next week.